Whoops! Hello, Ruby fans. Welcome to the Boopcast episode 74, not 73. We are your hosts, Kaden and...
Corey.
I almost said She-Noob. I was this close to saying it.
I was editing my reaction to chapter 5 yesterday, and there was a part where I was like, what's Caden's new name? New username.
That's why I just said Kaden instead of QueerNoob, because I almost said She-Noob and I panicked. And also, sorry I didn't switch over to the right screen immediately. That was my fault. I changed the way I'm doing things today because I had an audio problem last time. And so I forgot to switch to this screen. Technical problems, yay.
Yay.
Welcome to the Boopcast. We're going to be chatting about episodes 4 and 5 today. Also in true me fashion, the last Boopcast didn't go up until 2 hours ago. I did this last time. Whoops.
Listen, this week though, no, it won't. It won't be.
We're kidding ourselves if we think that I'm actually going to manage to do it right this week.
See, that thing is, I remembered like 3 or 4 days ago about the Boopcast and was
and you didn't tell me.
But it was while I was in bed, and I should have just like got on my phone and been like, by the way, the Boopcast.
When you think of it. Yeah, because
I was like, yeah, I'll think of it tomorrow.
Like, I exported it immediately and then forgot to actually publish it on YouTube. It was just sitting there uploaded for the last 2 weeks. Whoops.
And you can't schedule something that way, can you?
Not through the export, no. I can then set it to schedule on YouTube, which I didn't do. Which I'll have to remember to
maybe
do
for this week.
Yeah, maybe this week I'll remember to do it. Anywho, episodes 4 and 5.
Yes.
Oh boy.
Didn't take notes this week because
no, neither did I. I literally just skimmed the episodes just now to remind myself what was going on. Yeah, I have subtitles just say
I'm fungal.
That's not what he said.
For me.
That's not what he said. I'm fungal, you're cordyceps. Code steps, yeah, well done.
Mine said the cold accepts, so you know.
The cul-de-sac. What are we talking about? Ruby. I have a feeling that there's gonna be not that much to talk about for chapter 4 and lots to talk about for chapter 5.
Yeah, I mean, here's the weird thing. Chapter 4 was technically longer than chapter 5.
Yeah.
And it felt half the length.
It did. I don't know it's so weird about like the runtime of the episodes for this volume, because like it's so inconsistent with how long the episodes feel.
Yeah, because they've all been roughly the same length.
Yeah, give or take a minute or two. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like the biggest difference is episodes 3 and 5 thus far, which is like 3 minutes of difference.
Yeah.
But granted, you know, episode 3 had a fight scene in it, so...
Yeah. I almost feel like, should we just say hang structure this week and just dive straight into what we want to talk about?
I mean, we could, because like...
neither of us have notes, so...
I would say, I really... window. Yeah, especially because I don't have, like, a ton to say on 4...
No.
Because again, it was just... there was a lot of exposition, especially in these last 2 episodes. Yeah. Because we have the curious cat now, who's just our...
door real quick. Just keep talking. I'll be back in a second.
But yes, there were... now that they have the curious cat, there's a lot more explaining of what's actually happening in the Ever After, as opposed to, like... just them flailing through remembering what Alex wrote, and now they actually have a source that's telling them, here's what's going on.
Yes, the cat. I'm still not sure what to make of him.
Yeah.
I still don't know if I trust him or not.
Yeah, the curious cat. Well, here's the thing, especially because, like, So at the end of episode 4, they gave the herbalist herb
Herb.
part of their heart, but like
Herb Bertlinger.
herb Bertlinger. But and then in episode 5 they explained that, like, you know, basically with all the ascension stuff, that I don't know, it's just the Curious Cat has weird powers and I don't trust it.
Mm.
Like, I'm like, is the Curious Cat, like, because we keep talking about the storyteller, or like that
Yeah.
there's somebody in charge of Ever
Is he the
After in some way?
self-insert?
Yeah, so I'm like, or is the Curious Cat just like, you know, the right hand of whoever this entity is? I don't know.
We still know nothing. We're fucking 5 episodes in and we still don't have a clue. We know nothing.
Yeah.
There's just constantly more and more questions being brought up and not enough stuff being answered. I do
I
like how,
know,
though,
like,
in chapter 5, how they were doing a bunch of exposition and the cat's like, exposition is
exposition's
boring.
boring. I
Just,
know, I was like, ooh, that felt pointed.
yeah, very pointed. Volume 5 and 4. um
Yeah. I mean, people just in the fandom in general just hates exposition at all.
Well, if it's
Like,
presented in the right way, it can be interesting. Like they did in Volume 6, that was a brilliant way to present exposition, but the way they did it in Volume 4 with the like discussion around the fire and all of that was fine on first viewing and incredibly fucking boring on every other view.
That's true.
It's a skippable moment. Because once you have the information, it's not interesting to hear it all again. And they didn't present it in a very interesting way.
Yeah. I mean, especially like, I granted, I've only seen episode 5 3 times now. One was watching it originally, one was editing my video, and then one was when I rewatched the episode an hour ago.
Yeah.
But like, the conversation about Ascension, I didn't find boring on any of the 3 watches, like, because it was interesting and it was something to think about. It wasn't just like, here is how we do, here is the world and how it works.
And it's a complex sort of thing as well. It took me a second to wrap my head around it. Whereas, like, this whole idea that, like, the Red Prince was the Red King. And, like, people they ascend to be fixed, essentially, when something breaks. So it's like, this whole world seems like it's very carefully controlled by something.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing is, I'm a little sad that we didn't have an episode after 4, because I did have that theory after episode 4, where I was, because they were talking so much about changing and blah blah blah, and I was wondering, it was like, oh, so is it like after the Red King lost to Alex, did he start like throwing a fit and acting super childish, and so like the realm changed him to reflect his new childishness? And that's basically kind of what happened. So I'm like, damn it.
Yeah, and the way they remade him, or the way the Curious Cat described it, was that he was made to win no matter what, which is why he cheats the second time around when he didn't the first time. And it's probably he was made that way because he lost to Alex. And that wasn't supposed to happen. So then he was fixed to make sure that he would win no matter what. And now he's lost again. So now the question is he going to ascend again and become something else again? Because, again, something that wasn't supposed to happen did happen.
It's also, I do think it's interesting as well in that moment where in episode 3, the second that Ruby said they were humans was when the Curious Cat showed up. So like the Curious Cat had clearly been monitoring the Red Prince, and it wasn't until, you know, we're humans that the Red Prince was like, or that the Curious Cat was like, interesting. So like, you know, that's all the more why I'm kind of like, I don't know if I trust this cat. Like,
yeah, there's something screwy going on with, like, because they've talked about other people since Alex and before them. So there's been other humans that have fallen into the ever after in that space between Alex and now. And it brings up a whole other interesting thing with Jean, which we'll get to in a minute, because oh my god, we need to talk about Jean. But this entire world, while it seems very chaotic and very like there's a lot of there's many different elements to it, it is being very carefully controlled by something or someone. And it's the whole idea of Ascension is about control, it seems.
Yeah.
Because it's like they talk about fixing people. And like, it seems like when Alex came through the first time, she kind of disrupted the entire world order a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know it's the other thing is too is that like it partially like it did sound like it was about fixing people. Am I late? No, we've only been chatting for 10 minutes now.
10 minutes, yeah, about that.
We're just kind of going all over the place though. But
we're spitballing about Ascension, which was the thing they talked about in episode 5. Yeah.
Yeah, that was they were talking about that while they were riding over to
God, the Mushroom Land is so fucking pretty. It's like
it's the only one that we actually have a name for. It's the Garden Acre.
The Garden Acre, yes.
Which that makes me I'm so curious who's in charge of the Garden Acre.
Because like we'll probably find out.
Well, I mean, because I thought it was going to be Herb, and then Herb's just you know.
Herb's just a crazy old coot.
Yeah, I'm almost wondering because of how things are. Do you think it's Jean?
It might be, honestly.
Like could it be Jean?
I got that vibe because like he took them up to the very top of the sort of
the lily pad.
Tower. Yeah, the lily pad thing. It kind of seems like he might be top dog in this area. Yeah, we're gonna have so much to say about Jean.
I know.
But,
yeah.
Let's get everything else out of the way first, because we'll talk about it forever.
Yeah. The thing I was saying is that Ascension, well, in like Herb's case, it was about fixing him because like his heart, he'd strayed away from his original purpose and his original desire. But like the Curious Cat also says that like, you know, it's about where if you fulfill your purpose and you fulfill your desire, it's about, you know, when you ascend and are then remade, you are, you know, like given a new purpose. And you know, like even when Herb talks about changing people, it's about like your heart's true desires and stuff like that.
It's almost like they're being recycled and repurposed.
Yeah,
they are being repurposed.
It's kind of reincarnation.
It is. Yeah, every being, everything within this world has a use, has a purpose to fulfill, and like they don't have identities as such. They have purpose, but
which we kind of already knew because of everything that Little has said to us.
They're genderless, and they have no sort of, they have an awareness of self, but I don't know how much of a sense of self that they have. Like it seems they're aware of their own existence, but do they have a sense of self? It's like a kind of a separate sort of idea that like the reason that humans seek purpose in life is because we have a sense of self. But if you have a creature that is assigned a purpose and knows what their purpose is, and their entire existence is to fulfill that purpose, then do you even need a sense of self? Is that a redundant trait?
But it's interesting though, because Little does seem different. Well, it's the thing where we don't know. We don't know, is Little different, or is this just like the natural life cycle of Ever After, where Little doesn't know their purpose yet?
Yeah, that's the question. Is when they
like because Little even said that like I don't have a purpose yet, or like, you know, is a thing where like do they have to find their purpose or are they given a purpose? But since
Yeah.
Little exists, the way that they make Ascension sound, it sounds like Little should have come back with a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But since Little doesn't seemingly have one, that do they have to find it then? Like I'm so curious about Little in all this talk of Ascension because, you know, like how aware of their own purposes are they?
Yeah, and does it vary depending, like, creature to creature? Like, is Little needing to search for their purpose a product of Little being a mouse? Is that just a mouse thing? Is it different creature to creature? Do some creatures ascend knowing their purpose already, and do some have to find it? It's the question of, is it, are all creatures supposed to be aware of their purpose and Little's just different, or does it vary based on creatures? I almost feel like it could be like um the l'Cie focus in Final Fantasy 13, where they're given a
Oh
very
yeah.
vague idea, but they have to figure it out themselves. Where it's like, here's
Hmm.
your focus, this is what you need to do, but I'm not going to tell you how to do it. You have to figure that bit out yourself. I'm like, is it like that almost, where
Yeah.
they have a
Well,
vague
it's
idea
also
of what it is, but they have to figure
mhm,
out the path to it on their own.
mhm. And the other thing is too that we've only really seen these three different instances of like explicit
Mm-hmm.
purposes
Mm-hmm.
with the Red Prince, Herb, and Little. And so like the Red Prince was obviously in charge of their acre, like that entire acre. And then Herb was kind of a weird, interesting spot where Herb had strayed from their
Mm-hmm.
purpose. And then Little is just lacking one. So it's like, is it a thing where it's like, because the Red Prince is in charge, he was given more expressly, here is your purpose.
Yeah. Or does he
And
just
then like,
instinctively know what it is?
or yeah, that too.
Yeah.
It's
It's
it I
interesting. It's interesting. And also, a thought just occurred to me then, and I'm losing it. That's annoying. I was going to say something about. Oh, in a world that's like so carefully controlled, it seems, from the outside, the fact that these creatures even still have free will is interesting. Because Little had the free will to leave their um, pack, as it were, and travel with Team Ruby in the first place. And Herb had the free will to stray from their purpose. There or he? I don't remember.
uh I
I think there. Um,
I think there because I'm
I
like
think the only one they've referred to with non-gender neutral pronouns so far has been the prince and the king. I don't
I
think
think
anyone
so,
else.
yeah.
Yeah,
Because I don't even know if they ever,
refer to Herb. Yeah, I'm not sure.
yeah, in
It's
any
just
way.
Herb.
Yeah. I'm trying
um,
to think. I think that the girls might have
they
actually, but
might
I
have.
think that
I'm
they
not
use
sure. I can't
they.
remember. Um, but yeah, it's interesting idea of like, even though everything has a purpose, everything serves a purpose, they still have the free will to go outside of that. But if they stray too far, then they're ascended and remade and repurposed for either the same thing or something else. We don't even know if everybody ascends with a new purpose. They could ascend back to the old purpose that they had. I
Yeah.
think it just
Well,
depends
it's
on what
also
roles people need to fill.
it's interesting though because Ascension is in a weird way it's like twofold where it's you succeed and you ascend
Hmm.
or you failed and you ascend.
Yeah.
Like it's just this ever and especially the other thing that I found really interesting is that he or the cat said that people ascend to the ever after, but
Hmm.
the world is still the ever after.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, is this just one big like reincarnation
Cyclical thing.
afterlife
Yeah.
metaphor?
I think
Like,
it's a cyclical sort of system where like they ascend back to the ever after, where like everything is cyclical, everything sort of goes in these cycles of like, okay, well, this one has served their purpose, so now they ascend and we give them a new purpose, and now they're over here doing this. Or it's, you know, like this one kind of failed and strayed from their purpose, so we'll ascend and give them a new one. And it's like kind of that, it's all about repurposing, recycling, nothing is wasted sort of mentality, where like these,
Which it's then interesting that the Jabberwocker even exists in this
yes,
world.
because it seems like nothing in the world is expendable, but it is but they are expendable. It's interesting because they're expendable in the sense that if they fail at their current purpose, they'll just ascend and give them a new one. But that is still not expending them, it's repurposing. It's interesting because it all seems to be so carefully, meticulously controlled, but there's that sort of whimsical nature of ascension and just being like, that didn't go so well for you, let's ascend and have you doing something else.
Yeah,
It's
let's try
interesting. Again, it's a similarity to drawing similarity to Final Fantasy 13 with the Lassies, that if they succeed in their focus, they turn to crystal and they awaken centuries later with a new focus. Or rather, with their focus fulfilled. If they fail at the focus, then they turn into Seath and they wander the plains for eternity, begging for someone else to finish their focus for them. And then you have Vanille, who's a unique case where she had a combined focus with Fang. I'm going to spoil the game.
Yeah, I was about
it's
to say
15 years old if you haven't played it by
so
now.
old at
It's
this
not
point.
15
Yeah,
years old, but it's pretty old. Vanille and Fang
probably
had
13 years old.
they
it's
had
pretty
a combined purpose. They had a combined focus that they had to fulfill together. It required both of them to participate. And Fang tried to take all of that on by herself, and in doing so completed her focus, and they both turned to crystal, but then Vanille woke up centuries later and her focus was unfulfilled because she didn't play her part like she was supposed to. Fang tried to play her part for her, and so then they had to go back through the cycle again in order for Vanille to fulfill her focus. It's sort of like that, where it's like it's very cyclical. Except nobody turns to Seath in this universe, so that we've seen so far. If they fail, they're just given a new purpose.
And that does make me wonder about the Jabberwocker's purpose within this world. Is like, is it a case of, you know, like, is the Jabberwocker like the enforcer almost, you know? Or is like the Jabberwocker the failsafe, like,
or is the Jabberwocker an anomaly that's not
or that
supposed
too.
to exist? Is it like the Grimm in that way, where it is a being without purpose?
Or is it just like the counterbalance of a world where nothing ever dies, but they still need the ability of, well, like, this is a more recent example, so I'll be careful with how I talk about it, but in Horizon Zero Dawn, when you learn about what Hades' purpose is
Zero Dawn,
within
the first one, or
the first one,
the first one? Okay, yeah, it's not that recent.
I mean, that's true.
That game's like 6 years old.
Oh, it's probably old. Yeah, maybe. But Hades' purpose is the failsafe of, if the creations go awry, Hades is there to start over.
Yep.
Like, so it's a thing where it's like, what if one of these creations, you know, because like even Herb had gone bad, had strayed from their thing. And if the Curious Cat hadn't, you know, given up a piece of their heart so that way Herb could see the error of their ways and then ascend,
would become something like the Jabberwocker.
Yeah. Or would the Jabberwocker then go and get Herb because, you know, you're not fulfilling your purpose and you're not ascending, so we need to get you out of here.
We're forgetting a vital piece of information about the Jabberwockers too, that they consume these beings. They eat them. Which is an interesting... I mean, I don't want to use the example of Death Eaters, but I will. It's that sort of thing where, like, it seems like the Jabberwockers' only purpose, as it were, is to consume life. That seems like the driving force behind its existence. Now the question is that a deliberate thing? Is it a balanced thing because all light needs darkness? Is it is it a play by who or whatever is in control of this realm to make things more interesting, as it were? Because it's the fact that this whole world is a fairy tale world. It's a story. It is
Mm-hmm.
a living story is what's going on here. um why
But
did
it's also
an ad just
interesting
sorry
though
an
that
ad just rolled? That should not be happening. My
oh.
pre-rolls are all. Why did an ad break just sorry I'm just I just got distracted. I don't know why an ad break just ran. That's really weird. It shouldn't have done that. Anyway, sorry if you're in ads right now.
um
Uh, yeah, it's
about
interesting because it's like, what purpose do the Jabberwockers serve
well, and
in
that's the other
this
thing too
story?
is that like Jean says, there's only supposed to be one Jabberwocker. There's
Yeah.
only the one. And like if that's the case, it's clearly like it's the same one then that Alex fought. Because we know that
Yes.
they say that Alex fought the Jabberwocker, not that Alex killed the Jabberwocker.
Everyone seemed very surprised when there was many Jabberwocker because
Well,
of
I
Neo.
mean, because of Neo,
We
yeah.
know that that's
But
because of Neo, but for them, as far as they were concerned, there should only be one Jabberwocker. It's always been referred to singularly, Jabberwocker,
hmm
not Jabberwockers. We've never heard of more than one. So, and
hmm
everyone seemed very shocked when there was more than one. And
yeah.
people would always say the Jabberwocker, not a
hmm
Jabberwocker. So yeah,
hmm
I think you're right in saying that there's supposed to be only one, and now Neo's messing with things, obviously. Um,
hmm But it's interesting though. It does make me wonder about Neo's abilities and such as like how how much of the Jabberwocker do these illusion clones contain?
yes.
Like if I mean, because as we kind of saw at the end of episode 5, they got the Hawker.
How
So like,
tangible are they? Is the question.
mhm.
Yeah.
Did they if they consumed the Hawker, did they destroy him or destroy them?
I think they do. I
Like,
think when the Jabberwocker consumes a being, it is destroyed and can no longer ascend. I think that's what the
mhm.
idea is.
Yeah, but I'm wondering is because they're Neo clone
Are they
thingies,
capable of doing that? Yeah.
are they do they have the same ability or
I
like
think it's safe
the
to
other thing?
assume so.
Yeah. The other thing is people also do still think that like Neo might have killed the Jabberwocker in episode
Yeah,
3
that's
or like
mm,
torn it asunder maybe. So
yeah.
like all of these things contain a little piece of the actual Jabberwocker, so they all kind of have its ability maybe. I don't know. We don't know how Neo's new semblance works.
No, I don't think she even fully understands it yet either. She's sort of experimenting at this point. I'm wondering if it's similar to Weiss's summoning, where like Weiss defeats a Grim and she can summon it basically from then on once she learns how. Um, uh, is it the same for Neo, where like she killed the Jabberwocker and now she can just create them at will? Is it a similar sort of idea to summon? It's a weird kind of summoning in a way, but it's
hmm
illusionary. It's not. I don't know. Would we call Weiss's semblance illusionary? I don't know if it's illusion necessarily.
Yeah, because I mean, the problem is that like while Neo's things are illusions, they're tangible, and
Yes.
so are Weiss's. So it's like I
The
don't
trouble is
know.
we don't know enough about how this new part of Neo's semblance works, because
Mhm.
previously she's only ever been able to change her own appearance. That has been
Yeah.
and create illusions that shatter on contact. We've seen her do
hmm
that before, but not on this scale, and not with like literally creating tangible clones of herself and other
Yeah.
things. So we don't know enough about how it works. And mind you, when they killed the Jabberwocker, it shattered like one of her illusions. That's how they knew it was
hmm
her, because they
Yeah.
recognized it.
But it took a couple hits as well
Mm-hmm.
beforehand because
It was
like
tangible enough that they were able to fight it. Yeah.
yeah. And like it got hit. The other thing too that I thought was interesting is it was tangible enough and almost alive enough that the Grogurt parfait made it bigger.
Yes.
Like
So the
you
question
know.
is, are these tangible living things that she's able to literally duplicate, or are they more illusionary than that? It doesn't seem like they're as illusionary as her previous
They
illusions.
also talk now.
They
That's
talked.
another
Yeah.
huge thing that like
None of her illusions have ever spoken before. That's a new one.
yeah.
So it
So like
seems
the
like they
fact
are
that it's
physical clones, which is
mhm,
terrifying for her to have that power.
yeah.
I mean, how many
Ooh.
Jabberwocker were there? Like 3 or 4? More than
Yeah, I was
that?
about to say we saw at least 3, maybe 4.
Mm.
So
That's
like
terrifying that she can do that. That
mhm.
one evolution alone has given her so much more power than she rightfully should have.
The other
She's
thing
OP
that
as
I'm
fuck
like,
now.
how close is Neo right now?
Yeah.
Like, because there's no way that she just is like, you know, sitting in that creepy dark realm and was just like, go Jabberwockers, do
How
your thing.
vulnerable is she while she does this? I wonder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially there is a theory going around that Neo stole Ruby during the fight with the Jabberwocker,
And now
and that the
Ruby is
Ruby,
Neo.
and that either Ruby is Neo or is
She's a
just
clone.
another one of Neo's tangible clones.
Mm.
Because after a certain point, Ruby never spoke again.
That's a good point. She didn't. Well, I
And
guess we'll know at the start of the next episode.
the biggest piece of evidence people are pointing towards it with, and again, it's entirely, it could just be an oversight thing, is when Weiss is looking at Mrs. Potts, um, and Ruby comes up to comfort her. You can see very clearly into Ruby's like hood, and Little isn't there.
It
So
might
that's why
just be
people.
an oversight.
So that's why
Could be
people
an
are
animation
like,
oversight, but
mm-hmm,
also could be something, maybe.
could be something.
Could be
So it's
something.
like,
I think that's interesting, especially if Neo has the ability to create tangible clones that can speak in the voice of, whatever she's cloning. She can literally just clone anybody
mm-hmm,
and just have the, like, if that's not Ruby, if that's a Neo clone, there would be virtually no way to tell except for the mannerisms might not be there and the way she
yeah.
speaks might be a bit wrong.
Mm-hmm. But that's
Hmm.
it's interesting because then it also, again, it still does make me wonder, is that like I still think that Neo would have to have a range on how much she can
Oh yeah, I
operate,
don't think she
and
could
will
do
it be a
this
thing
for.
where like
Yeah.
once she gets off the lily pad, will like the Ruby clone just dissolve, you know?
Yeah.
The other thing,
Interesting.
a piece of evidence against this theory though is that Ruby was pretty much with the Curious Cat the entire time. So when would Neo have been able to grab her?
During the chaos, perhaps at some
I was about to
point.
say
I'm
there's
curious now to go back and watch and see if I can pinpoint a moment where she might have been able to do that.
there were a couple different times where I thought, maybe there is like right as the girls finished eating the parfait.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was before the Curious Cat came over and the other girls were still distracted, and there was kind of a weird audio noise that I think was, but granted, I think was supposed to be representative of the girls eating the parfait and like getting big that way, I think is what that noise was. And then the other one is once they start to run away
It wouldn't be the
from
first
the
time that
new
we've heard them
swarm
use.
that.
Oh, sorry, just trying to sit on my leg and failing. It wouldn't be the first time we've heard them use like audio cues for illusion because they did it with Emerald's semblance a lot.
Mhm. But
Um,
that thing is, it wasn't the same like audio cue as what we've heard for like Neo and stuff in the past.
yeah,
But granted, that's the only issue though,
Neo
is that we really only got Neo's like
in
the
Volume
sound of Neo's
2.
thing when she would when they would shatter, not
Yeah,
necessarily when she would use it the first
and really the
time.
last time we even saw her use an illusion was Volume 2. I don't think she used him in Volume 3, did she? She
Yeah,
wasn't
when
very
she was fighting
involved in Volume 3.
Ruby on the ship, she was using her
Oh,
illusions.
yeah. Yeah, she probably
And then
was. I just
she
don't recall that
probably
fight very
and then
clearly.
she probably used it in 6 against Cinder.
Oh, in 6, yeah, she definitely would have. How could I forget about that fight? It's amazing. What was I gonna? I forgot what I was gonna talk about again. Yeah, that's interesting if she's managed to swap Ruby out with a clone. Again, it could just be viewers reading into something that absolutely
I was about to say
there.
it's a
Their
very
running
interesting
wild,
theory, but I'm
is,
like,
yeah. The theory
especially because
crafting
we
with this
do
volume
need.
has been so, like, the culture around the theory crafting has been so interesting to see everybody's, because everyone has wild fucking theories about this volume, because
Yeah, especially because anything can happen.
it's the first time in RWBY where we've been thrown into a strange place that we don't understand the rules of, and quite literally anything is possible, as we saw at the end of chapter 5, where, I mean, we'll talk about John. I so badly want to talk about John.
I say
There's
we're
so
really
much
putting
to
it off
say.
because we'll talk about it for ages.
But I mean, I think this is the first time where collectively everyone in the fandom has no fucking idea what's gonna happen, and we're all just trying to, like, pick up little pieces as we go and try and connect all the dots, because we don't have really any information at all. Our chapter 5 was the most information we've gotten about this world so far, and we still have so many unanswered questions. Especially by the end, once we see John, everybody's like, what the fuck is going on? And now there's so much more theory crafting about Jean, and, like, the questions of being like, are things that we thought being confirmed, or, you know, like, are we going to find out more next episode? I reckon we will. I reckon we'll find out a lot more next episode.
I think we'll find out a lot in episode 6.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're gonna, if they don't show us, they'll tell us. I reckon they'll show us what happened with him.
I think they'll show us.
Yeah, I think we'll be shown. But I think it'd be too boring to just explain it all.
Yeah, exactly.
I really want to see what happened to him now. I'm dying of curiosity. I'm so glad the episode's coming out tonight, because now that we're talking about it, I'm like, I need to know. But also, Barbara tweeted out that chapter 6 is probably going to be the worst for spoilers so far, so we definitely want to watch it as soon as possible without going on social media, which everybody I'll be watching it when it comes out tonight. So
yeah, I might be, but we'll see.
It comes out at like 2:30 a.m. my time. I'll be up anyway, so.
Well, it comes out an hour earlier.
Does it?
Yeah, because America changed times. You guys haven't
right.
yet.
Your time change already happened, so it'll be 1:30 my time.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet.
Like,
our time doesn't change till next week, and we're going back an hour. So then the following week it'll be half midnight. I think that's how time works. I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Time zones suck.
Let the episodes start coming out at half midnight my time. I'm just gonna watch them when they come out. Definitely awake.
But yeah, a lot of people suspect that the thing that this episode will be, which granted, I've seen this theory for a lot longer than just this last week, and I'm like, where are people getting this information from? People have been suspecting that episode 6 would be the Bumblebee kiss, like the whole volume, and I'm like, why? I mean, like, now that they're saying,
it doesn't feel like appropriate timing at all. I feel like we're about to get a lot of Jean exposition. I can't say that next week. Tonight.
But like, I know, just all the warnings that we're getting. I'm like, shit, we're getting a Bumblebee kiss in this next episode.
Something big is going down, but why on earth would it be a Bumblebee kiss? I'm like, in what universe can we go from what we just saw to that in one episode? I mean, how is that going to happen? I'm like, if that actually happens, I feel like in the moment I'll be like, oh, that makes sense. But like,
True.
Right now I'm baffled how we're gonna get from Jean explaining how he fell into the ever after to them kissing finally after waiting 5 years. Like, really? I don't see it happening. But I don't know. Man. Where are people getting that idea from, I wonder?
I know, I've been seeing it like all volume, and I was like, was there like a list of episode titles released that I didn't see? So
I mean, when the episodes go up on Crunchyroll, they don't even have fucking titles.
Oh, I know.
Because I
Was
watch
it?
them right when they drop, and they never have a title.
Yeah, episodes 1 and 4 when I watched them didn't have
Mm.
titles, so I,
And that
I,
was
I
like
had
what
no idea what
eight or
those.
9 hours after they dropped. They still didn't
Yeah,
have titles. Good lord.
I think I watched. Actually, I think I watched episode 1 when it first came out.
You probably did, yeah. I didn't. I
But
watched it
yeah,
the next morning, and it definitely had a
but
title
yeah,
by then.
still, I was about to say, but episode 1 didn't have a title for like days after, if I recall correctly.
No,
Like,
because I watched it the next day, and I'm almost positive. I might not have noticed though, to be perfectly honest.
because I remember a tweet from Arnold saying like, "Is this intentional that
Oh
it has no
yeah,
name?"
maybe I just didn't notice that it didn't have the
Yeah.
title. Because I remember seeing the title, but that might not have been until days later. I did watch it like 4 times the first episode because it was very short.
Yeah.
And I was craving Ruby.
Oh, speaking of Arnold, though,
Mm.
we kind of, since we're talking about things non-linearly, in episode 4, when they were explaining Remnant to the Curious Cat, and the
Oh
Curious Cat
yeah,
was like, "Whatever happened with that Ciel Soleil? She seemed like she was going to be
I
important."
know. They're literally just shining a light on all of the questions that the fandom have been asking for years. Like, what the fuck happened to Ciel Soleil? There are a couple other things
Oh
in
my
there. I
God,
can't
they
remember what they were
actually
now.
the the captions actually spelled Ciel's name right. Right.
Oh
Ciel
my
Soleil
god,
was right, and I was like,
Ciel Soleil. Well done. Oh well.
I was about to say the last couple times it hasn't, but the first time it did.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. And it was like they were just like they're taunting us with it
Hmm.
clearly because we've all been asking this shit for years. Like, what happened to CL? And like, what about Team the rest of Team Sun and like shit like that? And it's like
Well, the rest of we know what happened with the
we
rest
know
of
they're
Team
in
Sun because
vacuo,
of
but you know
the
there's so
book,
many
but
characters that just disappeared off the face of the earth after Volume 3, and it's
hmm
like I get because the story took a part left at that point, but
hmm
like
I say most of those characters are now. Well, I mean, at this point, probably all of those characters are in vacuo
we've
because
now been to Atlas though for 2 whole volumes and no CL anywhere, so it's
yeah,
like
it's
where
true.
is she? Did she die in the fall?
I
Probably.
mean, no, which fall?
The fall of Atlas.
Well, Melissa, I don't think that many people died in the
I
fall
don't
of
think she died
Atlas.
in the
And
fall of Beacon.
she could
She
have.
didn't. Maybe she did. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like after Penny advanced to the singles part of the thing, CL just like dipped. Went
I
back
mean,
to
because let's think
Atlas.
too is I'm like we never even CL just had a watch. Like CL
We
never
never
even
even
had a
saw the other
weapon.
two. They had to have had 2 others to even compete in the
Yeah.
first place. Where were they?
Yeah,
Unimportant.
like
I get that,
unimportant.
but
Yeah.
like, who were that? Like, I'm curious. I just want to know. I'm like, I hate it when they leave this shit out because I'm like, my stupid ADHD monkey brain goes, but where are the two? um, and where's Ciel Soleil? What happened to
Mhm.
her? Is she coming back before the show ends? Are we just never gonna see her again? Probably.
We're just never gonna see her again.
Never gonna see
At
her
this
again.
point, at this point, the crewbie is like actively taunting
We will
Arnold.
see her in
Like,
one shot of the final battle for Remnant, and that's it.
mhm.
She's just gonna be in the background.
No,
The
they'll
shadows
show us
moving.
her. They'll show us her gravestone, and it's actually she died in the fall of Beacon,
Rip Ciel.
and we've been questioning
They'll
where she
bury
is for
Penny next to
years.
her. Oh my god.
Actually, have you seen? You probably haven't seen
I'm
this
so
theory as
sorry.
well.
Have I
But
seen what?
people think that Little could be Penny Ascended.
Oh my god, what an interesting theory. We have to talk about this. Um oh, imagine cuz like what's up with the penny weapon thing? That's so weird.
Mhm,
And it's popped up twice now.
mhm. I think it's just there to hurt Ruby.
Probably because they like doing that. But like what like why though? Why the like it's just it's such a it seems so random to me but so deliberate. I'm
Mhm.
like why is this the catalyst, and why does it keep showing up everywhere Ruby's going? Is it just to torture her, a reminder of all of her trauma, and be a catalyst to open up that trauma for story's sake? Or is there more to it than that? And that is such an interesting theory about Little being Penny. Because Penny's body fell into the ever after.
Mm-hmm.
Where did it go? And she was human when she died. So, not that I think that would have made any difference. I think if she had still been a robot and died, if she still had a soul. So, I don't think it would have made any difference. But
well, the thing that makes me kind of go about that is because when she became the maiden, didn't her soul fuse with the maiden's?
Yes, I think
so. Like,
listen,
when she died, shouldn't her soul have then like gone with the maiden powers to Winter?
Here's the thing. I think it is like a Ozpin Oscar kind of situation where eventually, or it's different rather, because eventually, Ozpin's soul fuses with the new host's soul, and they become one soul, and then he's reincarnated again, and the process repeats itself. But with the maidens, I think it is that when they inherit the maiden power from the previous maiden, they are absorbing that maiden's soul. It's tied to the soul, and it's tied to the aura, and aura's tied to the soul. So
yeah, especially because like that was the whole conundrum with
should Winter
Pura
technically have
and
Penny's
Amber.
soul, is the question.
Well, that was also the whole conundrum with Winter with Amber and Pura in 3. But granted, Amber's soul was torn asunder by
it
what
was ripped in half,
Cinder did.
Yeah.
So like they weren't sure what having like this extra half a soul would do to.
Well, we know they theorized that perhaps if Amber passed, what remained of her aura and her soul would seek out its other half, which is exactly what happened when she died. It sought out Cinder because that was its other half. It was like magnetism.
Well, I mean, then Cinder did also kill her, so there's that as well. But
she did, but
there's also the like final moments, but you know.
Yeah, that's a good point actually.
That situation's really complicated.
We don't know if it did actually seek out its other half, or if it's just because Amber's final thoughts were of her attacker, which was Cinder. Because, either way, it went to Cinder. But we don't know which of the two it is, so that's a good point, actually. But, yes.
But they still tried to use that machine, though. They were going to use that machine to put
Amber's
Freya soul into Winter.
Yes, they were going to use the machine to... I think the way they described it when it was Pyrrha and Amber was that it was the aura they were transferring from one host to the other. Yeah. And the aura is the manifestation of the soul. So essentially they're taking the soul out of this body and putting it in this one. Which would then fuse the auras together, which essentially would fuse the souls together. Because you can't have aura without a soul. So
I guess we can't really look at this man-made aura thing as a good representation of what the actual maiden.
But the thing is,
power
Penny's aura
change was,
and Penny's aura was generated from a piece of her father's aura, whose name I've forgotten now. What was his name? Pedro. Thank you. It was Pietro. I can't. I don't know.
Not Pedro, as in Pascal.
Oh, Pietro. It was a piece of his aura that he essentially injected into this android. But through that piece of the aura, she then was able to generate her own aura and therefore had her own soul. It was separate from him. But it did damage his aura. We know that because he said he only could do it one more time. And then that
would probably kill him.
If he'd done it a third time, it would have killed him. Yeah, probably. That's what he reckoned. And we'll call him the expert on that.
Yeah. He invented it.
He knows what he's doing. He invented it. So, but Penny's aura and Penny's soul was her own, because then they were able to take that from her android body and create a new human body for her just from the manifestation of her soul. So it was all her own. But then she died and transferred her power to Winter. So Winter should theoretically have her aura and her soul now. So what was left of Penny's body was just an empty husk with nothing in it. And we know nothing even about how the maiden power works in the world of Remnant either. Where do people go when they die? Do they go to the ever after? Is it actually heaven?
That's what I'm wondering. Is like, is the ever after like actually like where heaven? Souls go?
And is the reason that Little could be Penny reincarnated not because Penny's body fell into the ever after, but because Penny died and ascended to the ever after?
Yeah, it's how religious are we getting here?
I don't know if it's religious so much as it's just the cycle of life.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem very tied
because then that does
religion.
make me. Because I mean, that's the thing then that makes me wonder is I'm like, you know, if this is the afterlife, like, are the gods responsible for this place? Like,
that's a good question. I think it's interesting that instead of it being based on religious text of any kind, it's a fairy tale in the world of Remnant. The ever after is a fictional realm, most people believe. It's fictional, and it's a fictional story about this girl, Alex, who fell through the world. But it's, you know, as we know, actually very real and did all happen, and we're learning that as we go through this volume. But, and like so many other fairy tales in the world of Remnant, they could all be real for all we know. And like stories and legends like that, even in our universe, they all come from somewhere. There's some grain of truth to every story like that. It just, over the centuries and over time, as details get lost and people who remembered the events pass away and things get passed down through the generations, all the details get completely blown out of proportion, and then it becomes this fantastical sort of, so like even legends we know in real life came from somewhere. There's some grain of truth to just hit my straw. There's some grain of truth to every story, every myth, every legend, and it came from somewhere. It didn't just apparate out of thin air. I mean, there are a lot of fictional stories that did, but every good story, or every story really borrows ideas from somewhere else. Nothing's original. There is no such thing as original thought. It doesn't exist. So why am I going off on this tangent? Anyway, the point is that the fact that it's based on a fairy tale rather than religious text makes this so interesting, because this is a place that everybody believes is fictional, but it is actually real and could, in fact, be the afterlife. And which would
and the other thing is that's interesting is that also this place existed before it was the fairy tale.
Yes, we don't know how long it could have existed for all of time. It could have existed before Remnant, and remembering as well that Remnant is in its second life currently. Remnant has been destroyed and made anew before. So thanks, Salem.
Maybe that's what happened to all the magic. When maybe Ever After is the product of after they ended the world originally, they had all this magic they needed to put somewhere, so they created the Ever After.
Yeah, well, my theory is still that the magic from the time that Salem existed in and Ozpin existed in before
is dust.
Is dust. I still think that's my sort of number one theory about why dust exists.
And that I feel like that's a pretty also in-universe explanation as well.
I don't know that they've ever explicitly come out and said that, nor
I don't think they have, but
ever. I don't think they will. I think there are some things better left unexplained, because you don't want to explain everything to an audience, because it leaves no room for imagination. So it's like we want to draw our own conclusions about why things are the way they are and connect our own dots. And you don't always need to explain everything to the audience. Some people want everything explained, but I think the majority of people watching, sometimes it's good to not know everything. Yeah. Because then you can sort of draw your own conclusions, and it allows people more room as well to relate to things in their own way, I think. Anyway, I don't know why I went off on that tangent, but...
Tangents. That's the point of the podcast.
Good, I think it's good storytelling to explain only what needs explanation.
Yeah.
If it doesn't need explanation, don't explain it. I think,
Mhm.
generally speaking.
Unless we're
if
in
it
the ever
doesn't
after,
serve the
because I want to
story-
know exactly how it works.
Yeah. If it doesn't serve the story of the audience to explain why this thing is the way it is, or how it works, then don't do it. I think is generally the right idea when it comes to this sort of storytelling. But what were we originally talking about before we got off on that tangent? Oh, is ever after the afterlife?
That, yes.
Probably. Oh, you know how we got here? Because you said that Little could be Penny reincarnated.
A little could be Penny, yeah. Well,
that is
that's a
so
theory
interesting.
Yeah. I saw a take that I kind of agree with, that I hope not. Because
I don't know.
Penny's already been brought back once. We don't need her a second time.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Penny's not leaving. Just called
Little's not
Penny.
leaving.
Little isn't leaving the ever after. That much is clear. I don't think they can. Because what happens to them if they tried to leave the ever after?
It's
if this
true.
is a soul of a person who died on Remnant or somewhere else, even, is the ever after just tied to Remnant, or is it tied to other worlds, other universes even? Where do these souls come from? Did the beings in the ever after even have souls, or are they just purposes?
Yeah.
There's so many open-ended sort of questions.
Yeah, it's so metaphysical.
Yeah, it's very metaphysical. And we're not gonna
probably too metaphysical for them to even get into
all of it. Yeah,
this is just us going like, ooh, and...
but what if?
Yeah.
I love the what if questions. It's my favorite part of shit like this. Is that like, but what if this was this? And then you get there and you're like, oh, I was so wrong. I almost enjoy being wrong about things more than I enjoy being right about things. Almost. Almost. I like being right about things because it makes me feel smart. I also think that it's we're moving into an era of storytelling now where back in the days of TV shows like Lost, I'll use it as an example, showrunners tried way too hard to circumvent audience expectations. Is that the word I want?
I feel like people are still doing that these days.
They are, but I feel like we're moving more towards the idea of having a story and sticking to it, regardless of whether people predict what's going to happen. Because I feel like if people theorize and predict what's going to happen years ahead of it happening, that's just a sign of you sowing really good seeds for the end of your story. That's not a sign of your story is too predictable. That's a sign of you set things up really well so people can see where the trajectory is going. I think Game of Thrones fell in that trap in its last season where they tried to subvert everyone's expectations and it ended up failing miserably because what happened on screen then didn't make any sense because they tried to subvert everything they had previously set up and all the character development that they'd previously done in favor of rushing to the finish line and trying to do something no one predicted.
I say they could have made that story work. They just needed an extra season to do it.
They could have made it work if they'd set it up better. And within the same show as well, the whole thing of like, I'm going to spoil Game of Thrones. If you haven't seen it, it's your own fault.
Yeah.
The whole thing of Jon Snow being a Targaryen was set up well in advance. It was set up way back in the first fucking book. Everybody knew that he was a Targaryen. Everybody theorized this. Everybody saw that coming. But because they didn't change it, the payoff was worth it. Because even though everyone had been theorizing this for years and years and years, just because they predicted it doesn't mean the story is bad or predictable if that's what happens. It just means that they sowed the seeds really well in the, like, way back, you know, in the first and second books. I'm using the books as an example, but you know, it's not a bad thing for your audience to predict things because it means they're paying attention to the seeds that you're sowing, and you're sowing good seeds, and it just means that is a logical place for the story to go. And it's not a bad thing for you to do what's logical just because it's predictable. Like, who cares if it's predictable? If it makes sense, then I mean, there's a line where like shit can be too predictable, but
Yeah.
that's because a lot of stories follow the same formula. So if you watch enough
That's why I'm
stories,
really good at like crime shows.
because you're so tuned into the formula, there is a very
Because the
clear
formulas
formula. Yeah,
there's such a good formula where I'm like, you always meet the killer in the first third,
yeah,
like.
yeah. That's why when
So
we were watching Forever, you predicted who the bad guy was the first time he showed up on screen, even though it's not revealed until like halfway through the season. And I was like, how the fuck did he do that? Because I didn't see it coming. Because I don't watch loads of shows like that. So I'm not as tuned into the formula as you are. But like,
yeah.
you just, you see things coming from a mile away. It's so annoying. Whereas I'm more like over here being like crafting of these wild theories and trying to connect the dots, and you're like, yeah, it's that. It's so annoying. In my defense, though, I was mostly right, sort of right about Jean. Sort of.
Yeah, but
Sort
see,
of.
that was the thing is I watched the episode before you had, and so you asked me, you were like, was I right?
Yeah.
And I was like,
I was delayed watching the episode, so I said to him, I was like, was I right? And you were like, yes.
was a very hesitant yes, because I was like,
and I was like, why'd you say it like that? And he was like, because you are, but you're not. And then when I watched it, I was like, I get it. I was right, but I was also very wrong. I was on the right track. I just needed to add like a couple decades to my prediction.
Yeah. You were on the right track, but then you did take a little bit of a veer, but you were like, you know.
I would argue the story took a bit of a veer.
It's true.
From my prediction. I like that though. If it had been exactly as how I imagined it, I would be like, see, I'm a genius, I know everything. But the fact that it was sort of what I was predicting, and then also really not, makes me go, ooh. I prefer that. But again, it's like, this is logical conclusions that we can draw from the little bits of information we've been given. And it's really good storytelling when they give you these like tiny little like crumbs of like, here's something, and then we go wildly off with theories and we're actually on the right track, but it's not exactly what we were thinking. That's really good storytelling, is when they subvert your expectations a little, but you're still on the right track. And it's like, yeah, Jean fell here earlier, but did you think it was going to be 20 years earlier? It's like,
well, see,
no, I didn't.
Since we're kind of talking about it, I'm just gonna say I want to know how long it's been, but my current theory is
in the next episode.
I think we will, but I'm wondering, like, because in the intro there's all the clocks, and they don't have 11 on them. I'm like, has it been 11 years? Like, is that what this is representing? Or because the clocks count up to 13, has it been 13 years? Like,
People think
I don't know.
The Rusted Knight and his what even is that creature? Is it?
It's a stag? I call it the bunny stag because it's got bunny ears. It's got like the body of a stag. The two of them
together are the rabbit from Alice in Wonderland, hence all the clock sort of things, and time being a huge part of his sort of section of the story. I like the theory that Jean, being the Rusted Knight, is the original Rusted Knight from Alex's story. I like that theory because it adds so much spice to the idea of how time works in this role.
It does. But it also makes me nervous because then
I know! It's like...
Because I'm like, shit, he's 80 years old, like...
Well, I reckon he's probably around 40, I think would be reasonable to say.
I'm thinking that I think he's younger than Crow.
How old was he when he fell in? 19, 20?
I think he was
20.
19, yeah.
I think they're 20 now, aren't they?
I thought it's only been 2 years. And they were 17 during Beacon.
I think they're teetering on the edge of 20.
I think they're probably teetering on the edge of 20.
Which means Ruby's teetering on the edge of, like, 18. Ruby is 18. They did say that. She's already turned 18. I recall
Yes.
that being said at some point. I don't think
That
it was
does
in
sound
the show.
vaguely
I think it was on
familiar.
social media. But I think Ruby's 18, which means they're all teetering on the edge of 20 if they're not 20 already. So the idea of Jean being put around 40 years old would give us that 20-year time. And also, what would be really interesting is if we know how long Jean has been in here and he was the original Rusted Knight, then that tells us exactly when Alex came through Ever After. It was 20 years ago, which is a lot sooner than I thought it would have been. Which means that fairy tale has only existed for 20 years.
Well, 20 ever after years.
Yes, good point.
Because I was about to say, because like this is a fairy tale book that they've all read since they were kids 20 years ago. And in theory that story's been around longer than just that. So like
it's interesting because it poses a lot of questions. If Jean fell in after them and arrived in this realm 20 years before they did, then what was the story with Alex falling in? How, like, what was the time period in which she fell in and then exited the Ever After? What was the, like, what's the jump there? And, like, did she fall in at the same point she was in Remnant, or did she fall in years before, years after? Like, how does that work? Why was Jean thrown in 20 years before them?
yeah, well, it's especially I feel like if Jean is the original Rusted Knight from
I
Alex's
reckon he
thing,
is. I reckon
like
he is.
if that's the case, then he fell when he fell into the Ever After, he fell back in, like he had to go back in time because he, in the world that he was in when he fell, Alex had already escaped. Her entire adventure had already happened.
Yeah, because in the
and
world
yet
of
then
Remnant,
he had to go back
fairy tale,
into
this fairy tale has already existed, and so Alex has already popped out of the Ever After by the time the current events in Remnant are occurring, like seemingly years and years ago. We don't know how long exactly, but years and years ago, Alex popped out of the Ever After, while Jean is still existing on Remnant, hasn't even fallen in yet. It's interesting. It poses so much interesting questions about the way time works in this realm. Why was Jean thrown 20 years in the past when he fell after they did, and they weren't thrown in until 20 years later? It's like, why did it occur this way? How does time work here? Was this a deliberate action by who or whatever is controlling this realm? Somebody's controlling it. I feel like that someone is in control of this and is making and things are happening the way that they are because that's how they want them to happen. Sorry, a thing just popped up on my stream manager. The big question is why did it happen this way, and is Jean the original Rusted Knight? And if he is, that would explain so much, because it would explain why the raccoon is older as well. It would explain why the Red King is gone and the Red Prince is now here, because it seemed like some time had passed there. Because everyone talked about, the Red King in the past tense. It was not a recent thing that happened. The Red King disappearing and the Red Prince appearing. That's not a recent thing. It didn't seem that way. So, like, it would account for a lot of differences between Alex's story and theirs. If there's been 20 years of past time since Alex fell into Ever After. So,
well, I mean, they've already pretty much established that time has, because like as Weiss said at the end of episode 3, they're in its stupid sequel.
Yes.
So like, so time has definitely passed, but it's just a matter of, and again, and the other thing too is like with the whole concept of ascension as well, is it's like it could have been lifetimes for all we know of these characters.
I feel like I would need to read The Girl Who Fell Through the World to have a really clearer idea of the timeline of these events. If Jean is the original Rusted Knight, which it seems likely that he is. Now we know.
Well, here's
how
the other
long
thing
he's
too
been there
is
for, or roughly how long.
He would have had to have fallen in even before Alex, though, because he had to be the Rusted Knight. He had to be rusty.
Yeah, he had to be the Rusted Knight before she even fell there, which is like why was he thrown back before Alex even fell into the Ever After? Why was he thrown back
Mhm.
that way? And is it because whoever or whatever is controlling this realm wanted him in that role and so threw him back into it? Time is not linear in this realm. That much is clear.
Yeah.
It's not linear.
Mhm.
It is not passing like it does on
Mhm.
Remnant.
Especially because Neo fell last, even
Yeah.
though she was technically the second to fall.
She fell before Jean and at the same time as Ruby. And she didn't get there
Mhm.
till after they did. So,
Mhm.
granted, not long after, but still after. And Jean
Mhm.
obviously has been there for a long time. So, you know, it's like, it's so interesting the way that they've done it, because my theory was that Jean had been there for longer than them. That he actually
Yeah.
he fell first, even though he fell last. I just didn't
Mhm.
think it would be 2 decades before.
Yeah, that was me as
I was
well. As I
very
was
shocked
expecting
when
a
I saw
couple.
him.
I was like maybe a couple of years, not a couple dozen years. You know, like
I got really suspicious when I heard his voice. I was like, he doesn't sound the same. He sounds older, like a
well,
lot
see, that was
older.
the other thing too. Is I like because especially with how much the episode had been talking about people changing and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. I was still on my theory that like Jean fell into the ever after just killing Penny. It was super distraught and wanted to be somebody else. So he took the blacksmith lady up on her deal, and so he was somebody else. And that was why I was like, maybe that's why he sounds a little different, but it's still Jean, and but then
I
like
think we might have been wrong about that, because we
I think
both
we
sort
are
of
as
we
well.
were on the same page at that. I think we might have been wrong. He definitely seems like he's Jean. He's just 20 years older.
He's Jean. He's just
He
older,
seems like
yeah.
he's Jean. He's just older. I don't think
Because he
it's not
recognized
Jean.
them
Yeah,
immediately.
he did, and they recognized him obviously
Hmm.
because he's got
And
distinctive
that's the other thing,
features. But
and that's one thing too. Ruby asked the Curious Cat about Ascension,
mm,
which, granted, I guess this technically isn't Ascension.
no,
The in theory, the way about changing,
mm.
um, but if they would remember, and the Curious Cat was kind of like, your heart would, but you wouldn't.
It's almost it's almost like they get a memory wipe, but even people in real life who suffer from memory loss, they still have that sense of the memories
Hmm.
that they've lost. A lot of the time, like, they retain skills that they shouldn't remember. Like, you hear of like people who go through something traumatic and then suddenly they know how to play an instrument, and they go through some kind of brain, like, this is a common
Hmm.
thing that happens
Hmm.
with brain injuries, that people suddenly develop
Suddenly, they can
abilities
speak
that they didn't
Mandarin.
have before. And it's like, um this happens. The brain is a very strange thing, where it's like, even if you were ascended and repurposed and you didn't have your physical memories, would you still have a sense of your previous life? Yeah, that's the sort of question that I think the Curious Cat was posing there.
Hmm. Yeah. And then the other thing too is, but the fact that Jean called them out by, hello Team Ruby,
Yeah,
he had his
it's him.
this it's him.
It's him.
It's not just that he's like these people in his heart. He knows these people are familiar, and he knows exactly who these guys are.
Yeah, and
They
he so
are.
willingly came to their rescue as well. So,
Mhm.
um,
Well, he that's the thing. I don't even think, because the way that we see him react, he wasn't necessarily coming to their rescue. He was just coming to fight the Jabberwocker. And then when he saw them, he was like, "Oh shit, Team Ruby!" Like,
could have been, yeah. I mean, we couldn't see his face, so I couldn't know for sure because we couldn't see
mm.
his expression. But
They did like a thing with after all of when Yang was on the back punching, and they did a close up on him, and his like body kind of went like
I'll have to go
I could
back and have a
imagine,
look. I didn't
I could have
notice
just
that.
imagined his eyes behind the mask getting wide,
Bulging out of his
like.
skull. Um,
Hmm.
and that's the thing too. He says, "Team Ruby, you finally made it." He's been expecting them because he knew that they fell before him, so he knew they had to
Hmm.
show up sooner or later. He just probably didn't expect to have to wait this long.
Yeah.
Because he was like, you finally made it. Like, fucking hell, I've been waiting for 20 years. Where have you been? Like, but he knew they were coming. He was expecting them because he knew they were down there. It was just a question of when would they show up. And clearly he knows a lot more about this world than we do, which is why I think we're about to get a lot of information dumped on us in the next chapter about, like, not necessarily about the ever after, but about what happened to Jean, how he fell, and what he's been doing for the last 2 decades. And I saw a lot of other really interesting questions about him now is, if they pop him back out into Remnant, is he still going to be older? Or is he going to go back to... I don't want them to age him down. I think it's more interesting if they keep him older.
I'm so torn on it.
I know, because like, I miss baby Jean.
I miss my little boy. I'm like, my boy.
But it would
especially,
be so
I'm like,
interesting if they pop out of Ever After with Jean and he's fucking 40. And then he goes up to Ren and Nora like, hey.
Hey guys, it's
and they're
me.
like, who the fuck are you? What happened? Like, it would be so... And also, it's not the first fucking old dude who would be hanging out with a bunch of teenagers. Crow exists, so...
it's true.
He can just relate to Crow now. That would be so weird for Crow as well to be like, what the fuck? Last time I saw you were a kid and now you're my age. What's going on here? Well, Crow's a bit older than that, but...
Imagine Oscar, though, where he'd just be like, what the fuck? Like...
Jean also didn't need to get any taller, and he's definitely taller a little.
He's definitely, yeah.
Like, he was already 6'2", wasn't he? Or 6'3". He was pretty fucking tall before.
Yeah.
I feel like he's like 6'3" now. He definitely grew a little. It's funny because Jean used to be such a pipsqueak, and watching back volumes 1 and 2, I'm like, God, he's so short. He's not short. No, he's average height for somebody his age, but Ruby's so tiny, and Weiss is even smaller than her, and like Yang and Jean are like the same fucking height. I'm like, this isn't right. What's going on here? Because, you know, as I know Jean, he's 6'2". He's taller than everybody. He towers over all of them. He's taller than Ren, and he makes Ren look small. So it's like, I love that shot. I can't remember what volume it is now, where Jean hugs Ren and just like cradles his head.
I think it's 6.
6, yeah, it's probably 6. It's not 4, so I think it's 6. But how he cradles his head because he's so tall. He's like a head taller than Ren. It's so cute. But I'm like, God, he's fucking tall as fuck. Oh
no, I think it is 4 because I think it's when they're separating. Ruby and Jean are going through the town, and yeah, I think that.
Yeah. But yeah, he's tall, so it's weird to go back to volumes 1 and 2 and 3 and see how less tall he is, because he goes through a growth spurt between volumes 3 and 4, I think it is. I think that's when he's a bit taller. Yeah, anyway, just going off on a tangent about Jean's height. Anywho, God, it's so interesting. I need to know more. I desperately need to know what happened to him.
The fact that he's so much older, seemingly, like, you know,
he needs a haircut.
I know. I want him to get rid of the beard. I don't like it. The beard
is weirding me out big time.
It's weirding me out. I don't mind the long hair. He just needs to, like, clean it up.
Well, he always said he wanted a Warrior's wolf tail, and he's more doing like the sloppy Skyrim ponytail at the moment, which is not a great look for him.
I just am like, he just needs to. He was so, like, clean during Atlas. I'm like, who's this homeless man here pretending to be my boy?
Who's this blonde Jesus walking around? What the fuck's going on? Yeah. Yeah, he needs a haircut pretty desperately. I'm cool with the ponytail, but it just needs to be a little cleaner, you know what I mean? He definitely looks like he hasn't been taking care of himself very well. And I don't want that for him. I want him to look after himself better. The lines under his eyes too, I'm like, this is how they show age in Ruby. If you're over 30, you have lines under your eyes.
Yeah, I was about to say it's...
And your voice gets deeper.
That's the only way that they do, so that's why I'm like, is he like Crow's age now? Because, you know, or is he like Cinder's age, or I don't know.
Oh God, I hope he's not that old. Good Lord. He does have like kind of like whitish streaks in his hair, but didn't he have that before though?
Um.
I think he did.
Oh, I didn't notice any whitish streaks, so I was like, I have no idea.
I think there
I
was
was
in
just
the
like, it's
fringe on
John.
that side. Um, I
It
had.
also could have been the lighting as well, because it was very bright in that
Mm.
little room.
I know we haven't heard him talk much yet too, but God, Miles has done such a good job of making him sound like Jean, but not.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I hear him talk, and I'm like, I hear that it's Jean, but why does he sound so old?
Yeah.
Like, it's so weird. Um, he's so much deeper now. He finally hit puberty. It only took 20 years, but he got there. um, yeah. Oh, God,
My
I'm
boy
so
is so
curious to
old
know.
now. I know. I'm like this next episode better be like Jean's time in the ever after, because if they're just gonna try to just like shimmy past that, I'm gonna be like, no, go back.
I'm still not 100% convinced that he's not a bad guy though. I'm
I
still
think he's
not
fine.
100% convinced, but I haven't seen enough to make that judgment. So, um, we only saw him very briefly here. I feel like I was probably wrong on that front, but I'm
I was gonna
not
say,
holding my
especially like
breath.
the first part of your theory, also with like Jean being bad, hinged on Neo also having been there a while.
Mm.
And we now know that Neo's only just
She
gotten
fell out.
here,
Yeah,
so
she only just got
like,
here. Yeah. So I don't
so
think that my original theory of like the person she was across from is Jean. I don't think that's the case now.
I think it's Ruby
Ruby.
after she stole her.
Maybe. What's with the
Maybe
T though and the people behind her? Is my
I
question.
I don't know about that either.
It seems like she's making a deal with someone in that shot. Like there's some kind
Um,
of shady shit going down. It reminds me of Cinder and Spider Lady in Volume
oh,
5. What was her name?
Spider. Miss Malachite.
Yeah, that's the one, Miss Malachite. It's sort of, I get that vibe from it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know who it could be now. I'm like, I was sort of right, but also not. So I was like, well, now I got to rethink my whole fucking thing.
It's so weird though that we're halfway through the volume and I'm like out of ideas. I'm
I
like,
know.
how do we get to the end of the volume from here?
Like, I
Because
give up. I got no idea what's
I'm
going
like
on.
everything that we've predicted or used as source of prediction has happened. Like the only thing we still have to go on in the intro is that weird like upside down world thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, there is also that scene of the girls physically running up the tree, but I feel like that's a bit more metaphorical than
I don't think
literal.
they're physically going to run up the tree.
And then, I mean, granted, there is also the scene with Jean and the clocks, but granted, I have a feeling whatever that is symbolizing, if it isn't just the fact that he's older.
The pop-up book section in the intro, have we seen all of those? Or is there one more to go?
No, we've seen all of them now. The garden was the last
one.
one.
The last one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we've seen them all, because they were in chronological order.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've seen them all then.
So.
I'm just trying to think.
Ooh.
Yeah, no, we have.
And like even all the characters, the only character that we haven't actually seen yet is Alex.
Alex, yeah.
Like, and granted, I also still say there was that in the scene where Ruby's falling and you see all the characters, there is somebody standing behind Alex. So like, there is that as well. But I have a feeling we're not going to get answers about Alex until like episode 8. Unless of course that Jean was a part of Alex's original story, and then I guess we'll find out tonight.
I have a wild theory about who that guy standing behind Alex is, but I think I'm way off with it.
I don't think it's any. You think it could be an Ozpin?
I think it might be an Ozpin. Yeah, a previous life. But again, it just depends on the timeline.
Yeah.
Because when on Remnant did Alex fall into the Ever After? Then that would give us a clearer idea of like what the timeline is. Because we can't
I
tell
think
just from the ever after, because time's
I
fucked
think
up
it was
here.
years and years and years ago because
Yeah.
it's long enough that like you know it's a fairy tale. Like it's not just like this weird nonfiction book. Like it's a fairy tale.
Yeah. Ozpin, as we knew him, built the academies, and that was 80 years before, after the
Yeah.
end of the war. So he was at least around for that long in that life, or up to around. I don't know,
I'd
because
say the Ozpin we knew because it was the king who founded the things, and then Ozpin was the next iteration,
right.
and then we had Ozpin until Oscar.
Yes. So what if that is a previous Ozpin? Was it the one before him? Is the question, or was it
Mhm.
before the king? Like how far back we going here? But yeah,
I say
I
it
don't
could
think
be
it
it
is
could be 8
necessarily.
iterations of Ozpin ago. Who
I don't
knows?
think it's an
Like
Ozpin. I'm just like
I don't.
that's sort
Yeah,
of the
especially
only.
the vibe that I got is that person is a bit more villainous in
Kind of.
Alex's story.
Mm.
So like maybe they're a Salem subordinate. I don't know, but
That's the thing is too is like again, how old is the ever after? Does it predate Salem and Oz? Does it predate the
mhm.
world that they existed in? How old is Remnant? Is ever after older than Remnant? Is it younger than Remnant? Like, how many times has Remnant been destroyed and reborn? We don't know that. We only know for sure the one time. But it could have happened before then. So I don't know. Yeah,
Uh,
because we know for a
I feel like
fact
it would be
that.
too complicated if they'd done it. Like if it's like no, this is actually Remnant's third life. Like that'd be a bit too like.
Well, we know for a
Ugh.
fact that this is humanity's second time around. They stated
Mhm.
as much that the race that Salem and Oz were a part of before was the first iteration of humanity, and now this one's the second. But is Remnant older than humanity? And how much older than humanity is Remnant? Because I don't know necessarily that evolution is an idea that exists on Remnant.
Yeah,
Because
I
even
was
the
about to say
Faunus
based
aren't
on the
evolved;
create.
they came out of nowhere after the world was torn asunder. So
Mhm. I mean, just based on the creation myth, which granted,
take
I
with a grain
mean,
of
granted,
salt.
they had said that there was quite a bit of truth in that creation myth, but
We know the gods exist for a
the
fact.
yeah, the gods created humanity. So like, I don't know. It's that thing in volume 4 that we skip every time because it was interesting the first time, and now I've kind of forgotten like what
Yeah.
exactly it was
The gods created
because it was.
humanity the first time. But the
Mhm.
second, the humanity that exists now wasn't a direct creation, I don't think. Or it might have been.
I think it was. It was just they stripped away the magic powers from them because humanity needed to prove to the gods that they weren't just gonna keep killing each other and
Mm.
being
But did the
evil
gods
forever and
create the
ever.
Faunus, or did the Faunus happen on their own?
Well, I have read the fairy tale book on that on the Faunus thing, and how Faunus came to be is kind of fantastical.
It's up in the
So
air, I
like,
think, because I don't think
but
anyone knows
in
for sure.
reality, it's we don't actually know.
Yeah.
Although they had an explanation. That was a thing that they said that they cut from that episode
Right.
in volume 6 is how the Faunus came to be. But it was they ended up cutting it from the final cut of the
I mean, yeah,
episode.
it was long
So
enough already.
yeah, but yeah, I don't know. Although they did say that like when Oz came back, the Faunus just kind of existed.
Mm.
So yeah, I don't know.
I don't
Interesting,
know. It's
interesting.
interesting.
But my boy, he's so old now. I don't like it.
I know. I
Take him
miss Baby
back.
John.
It
It's
does kind of
so
make me
weird.
worried.
It's just the
I'm
whole
like,
situation is bizarre.
it does make me like wonder though, because I'm like, um, is Jean getting out of the ever after? I think he
I know
must,
it poses the
because it'll
question now
be.
of is he even leaving? Like, or is this
I think
it for
it would be
him?
more interesting for him to get out, especially if he's gonna
It would
remain,
be.
800 years old.
Give the guy some slack.
But
He's like 45 at most.
I'm
um,
also like, oh, but is he? And I don't know. And that's the same. He's now in the same boat where originally I was like, oh yeah, Jean's coming out of the ever after, but Neo, I don't know. And
yeah.
now I'm like, he's like fallen down into Neo level where I'm like, fuck,
It's so
are they
up in the
coming
air,
out?
yeah. Are either of them leaving? Yeah.
Well, because my thing with Neo now is originally I was like, is Neo gonna want to leave? But now I'm like, Neo's too powerful. Can they let her leave? Like,
I know,
can they?
right? If she leaves, she's
Can,
gonna fuck shit up.
well, it's not even just that. I'm like, as from like the showrunner's perspective, can they let this insanely new powerful Neo out? Like, it'd be
Well,
interesting, and
the
I
thing
don't want them to get
is,
rid of Neo, but
if Neo were to turn coat now, not right now, but now that
yeah.
she has evolved, her semblance has evolved this way, that is a nuke on their side against Salem now.
Hmm.
She's too powerful. But if she were to be on the protagonist's side, it would really tip the scales for them in a way
Hmm.
that they desperately need, because right now they haven't got shit. Right now they're fucked the way that they are. They're absolutely
Hmm.
fucked. So
Yeah.
something like Neo, or someone like Neo, I should say, would
How dare you?
really tip the scales in their favor. But if she's going to be on Salem's side or a wild card, then she's kind of too powerful. Just let her loose. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. It's things to think about in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, it also does where was that thought? I had it and then it was gone. Neo. Her semblance. The outside. Oh, since they've met up with Jean now, Jean gets to tell them what actually happened because he
Oh God.
he he knows the events up until the end, like.
Mm-hmm. Well, he at least knows everyone
So
else made it through safely. That's good.
that's true. I mean, yeah. Well,
He
but he
doesn't know what
doesn't
happened on
though.
the
He
other
just
side, though.
Yeah, he just knows that everybody made it through the portal. Like he doesn't know what's
Not
happening on the other
safely
side.
necessarily. Yeah, he knows that they're in Vacuo, but what became of them after that is a mystery. Um,
Hmm.
yeah. Does he know Winter
But
went through? I think he does, doesn't he? Because
yeah,
he was the
yeah, because
last one left. Yeah.
Because Winter was like kind of trying to stop to go get him as
And he was like,
she
"What are you
passed through the
doing? Go!"
portal.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And then he didn't make it, and he fell. Yeah. So he was the very last person in there.
Yeah,
There was no one
but he
else.
knows that Salem and Cinder have the first two relics now,
Yes,
though.
he does know that.
So that's not gonna be. That's the other reason that I don't think that Neo clone Ruby is a thing because Ruby needs to hear that information so she can absolutely crumble. Like,
Wow. Poor Ruby.
listen,
She's going through it as it is.
I know.
Oh my god. She's just gonna end up in a mental institution at this rate. Good lord. Poor thing.
And she gave up her emblem. I was
Oh,
like,
I know.
I was so sad. And then when they saw Mrs. Potts when they were like heading up with John, I was like, smash her, get your thing back, like anything, kill that bitch.
Smasher. Poor Mrs. Potts.
I
Um,
know.
yeah, and what does she call it? A mother's promise or something?
Yeah, it's a token of a mother's promise.
So, did that rose belong to Summer?
I think so.
Fucking hell. That's a hell of a thing to give away.
I know.
And she just, like, didn't hesitate. She was like, take this. This is valuable. Here you go. And she kind of looked like she regretted it a little bit afterwards, but, yeah, if her mum gave her that, or if it belonged to her mum, no, damn. That's really sad. Also, she looks naked now.
I know. I'm like,
weird.
she's. I don't like it. I don't like it.
She's
Get it
missing a
back.
rose.
That's also the other scene that we've kind of just completely skipped over is the scene with Ruby and Little and the blacksmith lady.
Oh yeah, that was weird.
I Do you think that weapon on the wall was her mom's?
Maybe because
Because
she wasn't a
like
scythe user. We know that.
yeah,
Crow's the
but I mean
scythe user.
it's kind of scythe-like, but it's really more of an axe.
Hmm.
And like so like she could be the woodsman, you know, in the
Yeah.
myth, but I'm like, or is that going to be Ruby's new weapon? Like,
I hope she
I
doesn't
don't know.
change weapon entirely.
I say I hope that she doesn't lose Crescent Rose forever. Like,
She's gotta get it back eventually, but she has to earn it. I think it's the
mhm.
point.
But yeah, I know I was just I don't I was also wondering is do you think that the reflection she saw in that weapon was it Summer or was it like her idealized version of what a huntress is? I think it was Summer, but I'm also kind of
I
like,
think
you
it
know,
was
because
summer,
of
but
the
maybe a bit of both.
yeah, as like because of the nature of the conversation, I was just wildly overthinking like
Yeah.
what does it mean?
What does it all mean?
I think that the blacksmith is well there was a wild theory that the blacksmith was Summer and I'm like okay
No,
people
calm down. Calm down. Nope, too much. You've gone down the rabbit hole too far. Mm-mm. No, she's not summer.
but I think that that one might be could be the storyteller because the biggest thing I
Could
thought
be.
was interesting is she was forging a butterfly wing
Mm-hmm.
and you know a certain herb needs to be reascended.
Mm-hmm.
So like maybe she's crafting her new herb. So
Could
I'm
be.
just like maybe
I think
maybe
she's
that's
definitely the
what's
voice we hear in the trailer telling Ruby that she could become someone else. I think that's her.
yeah, that's definitely her.
Yeah, the blacksmith thing is interesting. I didn't. I was expecting somebody like almost like a fortune teller or something. I wasn't expecting like a blacksmith kind of character. That was a bit of a um
Hmm.
what's the word I want? A curveball. Um yeah, I don't know. It's all very interesting. Reality is just so um strange in this realm, like because there's a lot of like stuff going on where people are being like trapped in places that aren't really there a lot of the time.
Hmm.
It's happening a
Because
lot.
yeah, because Ruby was just standing in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
Like that was not seemingly was not an actual physical place she was
No.
in.
The rules of reality just don't exist in this realm.
Yeah.
So it's like at any moment anything can really happen. And she was the only person who could see any of that. Nobody else around
Well,
her
and
could
Little
see what was
could.
going on. Oh, Little could, yeah. Um, yeah, it's interesting. I don't know.
It was interesting though that if the blacksmith is like the in charge of, you know, ascension and blah 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 in some way, her asking Little like, you know, are you her uh guide, you know,
Hmm.
is interesting where I'm like, you know, if the blacksmith's in charge of purposes, maybe like, you know, this was her way of being like, is this what you want to do? Little like, is this what your purpose is to guide Ruby? Like, I know it's interesting. I'm so curious about the blacksmith,
I
and we
know.
got so little. But I also do not want Ruby being anywhere near her
I
anymore
know,
because I'm like,
yeah.
Ruby's gonna like grab a weapon and be someone different, and
It's interesting that that seems to be the sort of catalyst to be like it's almost like changing jobs where you just go, I'm gonna pick a new job off the wall and this is me now. And it's like
Mhm.
yeah, it's interesting. having it be a blacksmith where she can just forge anything, basically.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's probably the repurposing is more like reforging, I suppose, in that sense. If she is the one who sort of is behind or is controlling everything, she's reforging these beings as she sees fit.
Mhm.
It's interesting.
Or is she just another cog in the the machine that is the ever after?
Yeah,
Like,
is she just another thing like herb that's another catalyst to serve the story? But
oh, the other thing that I meant to bring up earlier that I just remembered is that even the Jabberwocker seems to have a purpose. Because remember when he encountered um, Neo, they were all like, fix, find, like they were looking for something. And they were trying to fix somebody. And so that's why I also do kind of wonder, are you in league with Blacksmith Lady, Mr. Jabberwocker? Because she looked like she was a little banged up, missing some plates or something. Like, so I know I'm just like, I have so many questions and I want answers.
I
I'm
know
like,
there's
will you?
too many
But they've already
questions.
given us so much information, but it's just led to 1,000 more questions.
I know every little piece of anything we find out about this world just brings up 100 more questions, and it's like everything we find out only makes us realize how little we know. It's just like we're not actually gaining any ground here as far as knowledge is concerned. We're losing it constantly. Yeah. I mean, I feel like we're gonna gain a lot of ground with the next episode because Jean is gonna probably be the catalyst that delivers a lot of information about not only his role in this part of the story, but also about the realm itself.
Especially, they are also now like properly separated from the Curious Cat. I mean, unless the Curious Cat just like moseys in, because
I'm sure it'll pop up at some stage.
Yeah.
He tends to.
But yeah, but I'm like, I think Jean could be their like next guide, at least for a couple episodes, maybe. But again, we kind of need a new purpose. Like, but that's the biggest thing that we need from episode 6 is that like their guiding purpose through episodes. Well, through episode 1 was like find out what's happening, and then 2 and 3 was follow Alex's story.
Yeah.
And then 4 and 5 was get the girls big again. So now it's like, so what's going to carry us through to? Because like obviously the end goal is still get out.
Yeah.
But it's like, but they have no way to like, where do they go from here? Especially meeting the Rusted Knight was the last thing on the list of getting out. Of following in Alex's footsteps. And we're only halfway through. So like, and more importantly, how are Bumblebee gonna kiss?
I will be very surprised if that happens in this next episode. I'm just like, how? In what universe? We're just in such a strange point in the story.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm curious to find out more about Jean and how he fell and what he's been up to.
Also, his bunny stag named Juniper.
Oh my god, rip my fucking heart out and stamp on it, why don't you? Jesus, I almost cried. I was like, why is this name affecting me so much? Stop it. That was basically how I went, okay, he's Jean, clearly, because why on earth else would he name it Juniper? Why if he wasn't himself, he would never do that. So
it was so funny. It's like I kept being like, "Oh yeah, obviously it's him. It's obviously him. It's obviously him." But I still kept waiting for him to take his helmet off.
Yeah.
Because I was like, "Oh, he's wearing the right armor, and the shield is correct, and the sword is correct."
Well, they kept us in suspense all that time, and I'm like, "We know it's him. Stop it with the suspense already."
But I was still like, there was still a part of me that was nervous when he took off his mask that he wasn't going to be Jean, and then he wasn't Jean. He was
Jean.
Much older Jean.
Daddy Jean.
No. He's too homeless for that. Get a haircut and then maybe.
Okay, well. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things again where like everybody knew that was Jean. It was blindingly obvious to most of us. It's like, yeah, the rusted knight is Jean. Of course it is. And they still kept us in fucking suspense about it for half the volume. And then in the episode, they like had this big lead up to the reveal, and it's like, we know it's him. Can you stop already? Like, the suspense is fucking killing me. It's so annoying.
But they wanted to keep the reveal of how much older he was. That was what they were hiding from us.
Yes, it's Jean, but not as you remember him.
Mm-hmm.
Something's changed. He got old.
Yay.
And then that leaves you with 1,000 questions of like, how and why is Jean now suddenly an old dude? Those pricks, they love to leave us off on a cliffhanger.
Yep. Bastards.
So.
Oh, we also didn't talk about the speeches, which granted that's in episode 4.
Yes. I said this.
I feel like that's
before we started, but I love Weiss's line of I'm the granddaughter of a hero and the child of a villain. I'm like, that's my favorite line she's ever said, and she's had some bangers. So
yeah,
it's so profound. It's like,
got him totally roasted. Thank you.
Thank you. It's such a good line. I don't know why. It gives me the good.
I'm the granddaughter of a
Weiss's
hero
speech was my
and the
favorite
daughter of a villain. Hers was my favorite as well.
Biased, but I loved seeing all of their.
I'm the citizen of a fallen kingdom.
Yeah.
The heiress to nothing. I will not be defined by my name because I will be the one to define it.
Did you write that down?
No, I didn't. I just remembered.
Wow,
I just love it so much.
You're a nerd. I just watched it too, and I can't remember it all. But
I didn't just watch it. So.
Wow. I loved all of their resolve in that moment of being like, no, I don't want to go back to who I was because it would be a betrayal of who I have become. And like,
I really loved Yang's line as well about if I've lost something, or if I'm missing something, it's not because I lost it, it's because I haven't found it yet.
Yeah.
I was like, yes.
It's like, yes, I wish I could go back and change what happened. I wish I didn't lose my arm, but it made me who I am today. So I didn't lose something. I gained something. And what she gained was more valuable than what she lost at the end of the day. And it made her stronger. And then Blake's sort of speech about, you know, because she was a person who used to be quite ashamed of being a Faunus and ashamed of her heritage, ashamed of her association with the White Fang and everything she'd done, and like there was a lot of shame that she walked around with, but now it's she's empowered by her heritage and her culture and the love that she's been shown by her friends, regardless of the terrible things that she's done in the past. And all of that sort of empowers her to be proud of who she is rather than ashamed of it. And then Weiss obviously being like, you know, she's been put through the ringer quite a bit in her life. She's survived an awful traumatic childhood. She survived a pretty traumatic time at Beacon, and then having to go back to the family that abused her whole life, and still surviving that and triumphing, and even though she had everything she loved taken away from her in an instant, and she still fought past that and rose up and was stronger for it, and you know, being like her younger self saying, what does the Schnee name even mean now? And she's like, you know, her sort of thing has always been like, I'm more than my name. She hates being reduced to her name.
I'm more than a name.
Yeah. She's always resented being reduced to her name and her status. And now that her status is gone and her name means nothing, now all that's left is who she is. And she's amazing. And we love her.
And she's my baby.
I think out of all of them, honestly, I feel like I am the most proud of Weiss's sort of development as a character and as a person. And I've always related to her the most strongly because I think it's because I was raised kind of in a similar way where, like, I was raised to be a hateful person and, you know, bigotry was normal the way I was raised. And that's sort of how she was raised as well. She was raised to hate the faunus. And she grew past that and educated herself and befriended, you know, faunus and realized what a terrible asshole she used to be. And I think that's why I relate to her the strongest, because it's kind of similar to my own story. So I'm like, I'm just so proud to see of how much she's grown as a person and how, like, accepting and like how loving and she is now, and how
and also
strong
just like self-assured as well, especially because like Weiss's thing too was she, you know, she was really lonely, and but now she has this unconditional family,
her
like,
found family, yeah.
so she's not lonely anymore because she has these people and who have helped her grow, you know, far beyond what her real family could have.
Yeah. Just imagine the person she would have turned out to be if she'd never gone to Beacon. Like, she'd been a completely different person. Yeah, and she owes so much of that to the people around her, but it's all come from her own inner strength as well. She's been able to...
Yeah, I was about to say, because she did have to be... She was away from them for a while and had some pretty good growth.
I think it's always interesting to look at who Weiss was in Volume 1 and see who she is in Volume 4, because she moves away from that environment and through Volumes 1 and 3 grows a lot as a person. And then she gets thrown straight back into that environment, but she's a completely different person now. And now she sees everything for what it is. And now she can't stand to be trapped in that environment because it is so the opposite of the way that she thinks now. And she's surrounded by people she detests, whereas before all she wanted was to be accepted by them. Now she can't stand them. So it's like now she doesn't give a shit what any of them think of her. Because, you know, as she says, you're all standing around talking about nothing. Like, your problems mean nothing. You have no idea about the world and the struggles of, you know, everyday people.
The people.
You're so far removed from reality, it's not funny. Yeah. So it's like... and she like reflects a lot throughout the volumes on like who she used to be, and like mentions it a lot of like, did I used to be this obnoxious, and like and laments to Blake in Volume 7, I think it was, about her complacency and the mistreatment of the faunus and how she wishes she could take it back. And it's like, I feel like more than any of them, she's done a lot of lamenting about the person that she used to be. It's just it's day and night. Like, all of them have done a lot of character growth. But yeah, I just feel
that's
like
my biggest
she's
thing is
an utterly different person.
Yeah. I want, by the end of the volume, I want to see Ruby have her speech to her younger self once she's, you know, found herself again.
Poor thing. She's so lost.
I know. Which that's partly what I think that the next conflict will end up being is, you know, like maybe not the next conflict, but I feel like episodes like maybe 7, 8-ish will be like Ruby's whole you know, crumbling sense of self finally just shattering, you know, and then having to rebuild that in order to get out, or, you know, whatever.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to her hearing how badly things went.
Yeah,
Weiss knows some of it, but Jean knows all of it, so... Or almost...
Because, like Weiss said, is like, maybe they turned it back around, maybe they, you know...
And then Jean's gonna be like, no. Shit's fucked
Yeah.
over there. Maybe we should just
Yeah.
stay here.
Well, that was even one thing that the Curious Cat said to Ruby in episode 4 is like, how are you gonna stop that immortal witch lady? Like, it's like, thanks, Robbie
Good
Damon. We didn't need to think
question.
about that right now.
Dunno. We've got bigger problems right now. Yeah, it must be very daunting as well because like their one focus right now is we've got to get the heck out of here. We can't stay here because Remnant needs us. But it must be so daunting, the idea of what they're gonna go back to.
Yeah, I say, but what are they going back to?
What
And
are
like
they
that's
going
even
back
what
to? Yeah.
that's even what Ruby's young Ruby's speech to older Ruby was about, like, this is all on you. You have to save the world. Like, and I'm like, no wonder. And like, even the blacksmith lady then was like, you have a heavy burden. If you want to give up that burden, just pick up a new weapon and I'll make you somebody different. I'm like, if I was Ruby, I'd be seriously going, like, that's so much for one person to carry that, like, yes, you have to stop the immortal witch that probably killed your mom. Like, and you have to stop her to save the
Salem
world.
straight up admitted to killing Summer. We know that she did.
Well, I mean, there's the whole thing of like, is Summer a wolf?
No, she's dead.
Hopefully not.
She's dead.
I honestly, I hope she's dead too. Like,
I hope so. But I'm pretty sure she's been gone for a while at this point. I think that Summer was the experiment, and then the wolf that we met, the silver-eyed wolf, was more.
Yeah, because she did say it was a newer thing.
Yeah.
So like, yeah. But
as well,
I don't know.
Ruby, like, it must be in the back of her mind of being like, that's kind of like a window into her future if she fails as well. That's gonna happen to her.
Too.
Or it could happen to her. That's gonna be her fate. It's a terrifying thing to stare down.
Yeah. Especially because it's that she could be used to hurt people. Like,
yeah.
Ugh. I don't like it.
No, me neither. I'm not looking forward to Ruby hearing just how badly things went down there. Plus, we gotta remember, it's been 20-ish years for Jean. He might not remember all the details, to be honest. It's been a while.
I hope that they establish exactly how long he's been there.
Yeah.
Like, because I don't want them to just leave it ambiguous of like, oh, I've been here a long time. I'm like, give me an exact number.
I need to know.
12 years, 6 days, and 3 hours.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I hope he's just like, that was 23 years ago or something like that. Just give us an exact, give us a timeline. We need something to work with here. Yeah. It's all gonna be very interesting. I can't believe.
But the other thing is like, I know. But also, yeah, again, time works differently in the Ever After, so he's like, maybe it's felt like 10 years, but like, But granted, I hope we don't get that metaphysical where it's like, well, he's counted that there have been enough days to fill 10 years, but he's actually been here 15. Whoa. Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
Did we skip over anything else?
Oh, did you see the rooster teeth in the in episode 5?
I did not.
There's a rooster with big teeth. It's quite terrifying.
I didn't know. I didn't notice that.
I think it was when the teams were separating.
Right.
When the tiny team was. Oh, that was actually a thing in the credits for episode 4 is they were all credited as Tiny Weiss Schnee, Tiny Blake Belladonna, and Tiny Yang Jialong for their voice actors.
Why?
It's
just still them. They're just smaller.
Yeah. But I saw that and I was like, what the fuck? Okay.
It's weird.
um,
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 I think that's.
I think that's everything.
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
I feel like we're almost gonna have too much to talk about after episode 6.
I know. I'm really nervous because I'm like this. It felt good having the 2 week gap for this episode, but I have a feeling that the next one is gonna be like, "Hi, we're here for 4 hours," because like,
yeah,
because we didn't have a ton to say about 4, but we had a lot to say about 5. Whereas I have a feeling, unless it's gonna be we have a ton to say about 6 and not much to say about 7, but I kind of don't see that being the case.
Well, if we have to do a 3-hour podcast, we have to do a 3-hour podcast, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll be back on the 8th of April for the next one, after episodes 6 and 7. If you're watching this on YouTube, we do live stream these every second Saturday. So the next live stream will be on the 8th of April. At 3 p.m. AEST, it'll be then.
Yep,
because we're changing time next week, so it'll be 3 p.m. AEST, not AEDT. So annoying. I'm gonna forget about that constantly. God, I hate standard time. Standard time annoys the crap out of me. Yeah, so it'll be 3 p.m. AEST on April the 8th. So it'll be an hour earlier than normal. Because I'm going back an hour.
Let's see.
No, it'll be an hour later than normal if I'm going back an hour.
Yes. Yes, you're right.
What would have been 3 is
it'll be 10 for me.
Is going back to 2, so it'll be an hour later. Yes, an hour later than normal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hate this. Why twice a year with the time change? Why can't it just be daylight savings all the time?
Listen, that's what it is here for me.
Standard time. It's annoying. I hate it. We don't need it. Anyway, it was literally for the farmers centuries ago. Why are we still doing this? It's stupid. It's 2023. Get rid of daylight savings. I hate it. Anyway. So
one last rant.
Yeah. It annoys me so much. Scheduling is a nightmare. Yeah, so we'll be back then. Gonna try and get this one up actually a week from now, but I will be busy on the 1st, so that might not happen. I'm gonna try and schedule it ahead of time though. Yeah.
Yay.
Okay, bye.
Bye.